This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Stick around to the end of the video for a special offer they're making available through my channel. Gamers! Apologies that this video is a little late this week. We've got a public holiday over here that messed with our schedule a little. Plus, the Stellar Blade embargo was the same time as I usually upload this show. Never a good idea to upload at the same time as a big embargo. If you're wondering where my Stellar Blade review is, it's coming tomorrow, in fact. I finished the game and the review is 95% edited. Really interesting game to talk about, actually. I liked it, I did, but it's definitely got some big problems in the story department, and I don't really love how much it's trying to ape Nier Automata. That's better explained in the full review, which will go live tomorrow. For now, though, plenty of news to get through this week. Like, did you hear that Embracer Group is actually splitting into 3 separate companies? It's true, and the best part is that they're still going to be led by the same guy that got them into this mess in the first place. Gotta love it. I'm sure at this point I don't need to recount the Embracer saga to you, but very briefly, Swedish-based Embracer Group arrived on the scene a few years ago and had one goal: acquire everything on the company credit card and let the Saudis foot the bill. Back in 2022, acquisition fever struck the entire industry, and Embracer Group dashed to scoop up as many AA studios as they could get their hands on. Hell, they even bought the rights to the Lord of the Rings, not the game rights, mind you, like the actual Lord of the Ring rights for movies and TV shows and games and you name it. Embracer Group HQ was Barad-dûr and CEO Lars Wingfors was Sauron himself. Okay, that's probably a bit dramatic, but you get what I'm saying. It all fell apart when the handshake agreement with the Saudi Sovereign Investment Fund fell through, leaving $1 billion hole in Embracer's balance sheet. The solution? Cancel projects, close studios, and fire over 1,300 people who could have kept their jobs had Embracer Group been more responsibly and astutely led. Most recently, Embracer jettisoned 2 of their prized studios, Gearbox, makers of Borderlands, and Saber Interactive, a workhorse studio who have consistently delivered as both a support studio and in their own releases. They're currently working on Space Marine 2 before moving on to deliver the Knights of the Old Republic remake. This week, after over 12 months of cuts and turmoil, Embracer Group announced that it was breaking up with itself, or more specifically, splitting into 3 separate entities like video game bosses do after you enter a phase change. Embracer Group will now be 3 separate entities, each of them listed on the stock exchange. The first will be Asmodee Group, which will focus on tabletop and board game publishing. The second is Coffee Stain and Friends, which will focus on indie and AA games. Think games like Deep Rock Galactic, Goat Simulator, Satisfactory, and Valheim. The third entity will be called Middle-earth Enterprises and Friends, and it's where all the AAA game development stuff will happen from studios like Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, Warhorse Studios, 4A Games, and more. None of this is reason to celebrate, mind you. It's just corporate chicanery designed to help Embracer Group stabilize their finances, distributing liabilities across new entities and adjusting risk appetites for each of them accordingly. We're not going to suddenly get a new Deus Ex game because the studio is now owned by an entity with "and Friends" in the title. Still, it is crazy that the CEO, Lars Wingfors, continues to remain in the top job despite his abysmal performance and how many people have lost their livelihoods under his watch. It's like he makes a bad decision and 1,300 other people get sacked. In fact, this guy is so entrenched that in the note announcing this restructure, he announced his intention to stay with the company until the heat death of the universe. Quote, "At the IPO in 2016, I made a promise to stakeholders that I would be around for at least 25 years, and I still have 17 years left to fulfill that," end quote. Read the room, my dude. That is not the announcement about your tenure that people were hoping for. Interestingly, Wingfors was quite introspective in an interview with GamesIndustry.biz. Quote, "I'm sure I deserve a lot of criticism, but I don't think my team or companies deserve all the criticism. I could take a lot of that blame myself, but ultimately I need to believe in the mission we set out, and that is still valid," end quote. Funny how he's like, I could take all the blame myself, before ultimately failing to take any blame himself, gesturing to some amorphous mission. When pressed about what mistakes he thinks he's made during his tenure, GamesIndustry.biz says that Wingfors did not get into specifics. Yeah, I'll bet. It's hard to predict what's next for Embracer Group, but with a reorganization of this magnitude, it's highly likely that its effects will ripple out for months and potentially years to come. They've dumped a bunch of debt and reorganized themselves, but they're still very far from in the clear. Turning to other news now, the Fallout franchise is having itself an honest-to-goodness moment, and you get the sense that Bethesda have been caught rather flat-footed by all this. Obviously, it started with the release of the Fallout TV show, which I'm halfway through now, and I am loving it. The locations, the casting, the writing, the gore, it really does feel like loving homage to the source material without being bound by it, or without feeling like a cheap Easter egg hunt. Talented people worked on this, and it really shows. The success has led to an explosion in interest in Fallout games, and an internecine war between fans of the original Fallout games and the fans of Bethesda Fallout games and the fans of the Obsidian Fallout game. I saw an absolutely perfect meme based on that Civil War movie where the dude is like, there must be some understanding, we're Fallout fans. And the New Vegas fan is like, okay, What kind of Fallout fan? As they say though, a rising tide lifts all boats, and no matter which Fallout game is your preference, they are all going gangbusters right now in terms of concurrent player counts. In the EU game sales charts, for example, Fallout 4 was the #1 highest selling game for the week, with Fallout 76, New Vegas, and Fallout 3 occupying the 8th, 9th, and 10th spots respectively. Fallout 76 in particular has seen a massive surge in popularity, achieving a new peak concurrent player count record of over 73,000 players on Steam. But the Steam community for Fallout 76 has always been small since the game arrived via Bethesda's launcher first, before being made available via Game Pass. In reality, Fallout 76 had its highest ever day one player count this week, when in a single day, over 1 million people played Fallout 76. Not concurrently, mind you, that is still a hell of a lot of people. It's led to some absolutely insane takes on Twitter where people are like, can we finally acknowledge that Fallout 76 has always been good? No, we cannot. The game absolutely is in a better state than it was at launch, as dozens of major and minor updates have not only made the game playable, but added new content like NPCs and Atlantic City, which to be fair actually looks pretty cool. So the game is better, sure, but for the love of God, let's not rewrite history to suggest that the launch state of Fallout 76 wasn't one of the single biggest catastrophes in the history of video games. Come on, keep your head about you. Anyway, the success of Fallout 76, coupled with the interest in every other Fallout title, saw over 5 million people playing Fallout games in a single day last week. And those are numbers that must frustrate Xbox at least a little bit, because it'd be really nice if they had a shiny new Fallout game to sell people right about now, or any time in the next decade or so. IGN put this conundrum to Todd Howard himself, who didn't have a whole lot to share on the matter, saying, quote, "I'm going to avoid putting dates on anything, I've learned that the hard way, so obviously our focus as far as new development right now is Elder Scrolls 6, but that doesn't mean we're not making plans for other things," end quote. Let's hope these plans include getting a different studio to make a Fallout game, because that would just make a lot of sense. There are some Fallout things to look forward to in the near future though, like the next-gen update for Fallout 4, which drops today. There's also that Fallout London mod, which has been delayed indefinitely after Bethesda didn't inform the team that the next-gen update was on the way. The team spoke to the BBC this week, where they didn't hold back on their thoughts on the way that Bethesda managed the situation, saying, quote, "It has, for lack of a better term, screwed us over," end quote. The project lead said he wished Bethesda would have given him and his team a heads up, and yeah, that seems perfectly reasonable, I think. That team will be assessing the scale of the required changes as soon as the official update is live. Fallout London is still coming, but we're going to have to wait that little bit longer for it. A longer than usual lightning round this week because we've got so much to jam in. EA Japan is a little salty over the release of Stellar Blade, but not for any of the reasons you might guess. In Japan, Stellar Blade received a 17+ rating by the National Ratings Agency. EA boss in Japan, Sean Noguchi, remarked that that was a little strange since Dead Space received an 18+ rating, meaning it couldn't be released in Japan on consoles. The reason that it got that rating was because it depicted severed body parts and internal organs, something that he says Stellar Blade also does, so he's like, what gives? And yeah, good question. Though as an Australian, I learned long ago never to question the logic of rating agencies, because logic does not feature into their decision making most of the time. If you are hoping that Mario, Link, or Donkey Kong might one day make their way to Fortnite, then you have not been paying attention to the way that Nintendo manages its IP. This week though, we learned a little more about that when GameFile spoke to former Fortnite creative director Donald Mustard, still a great name by the way. He says they wanted to get Samus into Fortnite, but Nintendo only wanted Samus to appear in the Switch version of the game, and Epic were like, how about no? It's a shame because I reckon a lot of Metroid fans would actually check out Fortnite with this kind of crossover, and I think it's just a cool thing that would make people happy, but then again, Nintendo's lawyers have never really been too concerned with that. A major win in the VR platform wars. Meta, aka Facebook, is opening up their Meta Horizon operating system to other headset manufacturers, and those manufacturers are biting. Asus and Lenovo are each making their own Meta-powered HeadQuest, and Microsoft will be working with Meta to deliver a special Xbox-themed Meta Quest 3 headset inspired by Xbox. This really sets the stage for the next phase of the VR platform wars, with PC remaining agnostic and Apple and Meta duking it out to see which comes out on top. Gotta hand it to Zuck, he's kicking some goals right now. Have you guys seen his recent glow up, by the way? Looking good, Zuck. Must be taking some new vitamins or something, I don't know. The problems continue for City Skylines 2. The game launched in a horrendous state, necessitating an indefinite delay of the console port. The most recent DLC has fared little better. The Beach Properties update currently sits at overwhelmingly -4% on Steam. Those are some Overwatch 2 numbers right there. And it's so bad that publisher Paradox and developer Colossal Order have offered anyone who purchased it a full refund, yanking the DLC from sale and promising to deliver it as a free content update to all players. which is kind of what they did with Overwatch 2 when you really think about it. In addition, the console ports of City Skylines 2 are no longer an ironclad promise, so yeah, it's hard to see how things could be any worse. Unless, of course, you had an entire esports league that collapsed in a heap because your sequel was so bad. But luckily, City Skylines 2 manages to avoid that fate. Larian, makers of Baldur's Gate 3, are back in the kitchen and they are cooking up 2 new projects based on original IP. And boss man Sven Vinke is pumped. Quote, "I don't know if we're going to pull it off, but looking at our narrative, visual, and gameplay plans, I think what we're working on now will be our best work ever. I get excited like a kid watching the key imagery, want to show it to everyone now, and grumble in frustration at having to wait until it's actually all working. Yes, it's hype, but it's hype because it really looks and feels good," end quote. God damn it, Sven, don't let us down. After Cyberpunk, we cannot go through something like that all over again. Ghost of Tsushima will arrive on PC in July, and it'll sport a new feature, PlayStation Trophies. It's an overlay that gives you access to PSN functionality like friends lists and profiles, and most importantly, the little bronze, silver, gold, and platinum trophies that people sacrifice hours of their lives to obtain. Most impressively, this overlay enables seamless crossplay with people playing on PS5, a feature that will come in handy since the Ghost of Tsushima Legends mode will arrive on PC day 1, and that mode rules. Don't skip it, it's seriously cool. Ready for your weekly dosage of hopium? The recent Nintendo Indie Showcase left everyone hoping for Hollow Knight Silksong news thoroughly beclowned, but there was a very small bit of Silksong news out of Australia this week. It just got a rating by the National Classifications Board. It follows a rating in Korea last week. Does this mean anything? Almost certainly not, as games are regularly rated well ahead of their actual release windows, but hey, it's something, and as always, we'll take what we can get. I feel like we're going to need to add a weekly video game adaptation slot to this news show because they are coming so thick and fast right now. Like this week, it was announced that Golden Axe is getting a Comedy Central animated series led by the American Dad writer Joe Chandler. I actually think that a comedy spin on Golden Axe is perfect because as straight-faced as the game was, it was also just goofy as fuck, and yeah, I can see this working. So, no release date for this one, of course, but it's on the way unless it gets cancelled in pre-production, a very common story for many video game adaptations. Here's another one though. El Paso Elsewhere is getting an adaptation. Have you heard of El Paso Elsewhere? No, you haven't. It's a game with less than 1,000 reviews on Steam. It's meant to be good, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty small. Either way, it too is getting a movie for some reason. And yeah, that is the thing that's happening. Man, and I thought Dredge was an odd pick. Last week of adaptation news is that Planet Earth's favorite son, Keanu Reeves, has just been cast as Shadow the Hedgehog. That means that he and Idris Elba have now played major roles in both the Cyberpunk game and now the Sonic video game adaptations. I desperately hope that Elba stars as the antagonist in some sick AAA John Wick video game, because long may the Reeves-Elba partnership continue. Some quick sales data to smash through. Sea of Thieves has just hit 40 million players, and that's before it hits PS5 this week. I remember playing it back at launch when it was a total piece of shit, but there's no arguing the fact that this game has come a tremendous distance since then, and today offers a truly one-of-a-kind experience, a very unexpected journey for Rare, but it's nice to see them thriving once again. And my personal pick and guilty pleasure, Power Wash Simulator, just surpassed 12 million players, helped in no small part by cool crossovers featuring SpongeBob, Back to the Future, Final Fantasy, and most recently, Warhammer 40k. You couldn't pay me a king's ransom to actually power wash something, but I will happily sit on my butt for hours doing it in a video game, and that is why our society is in the state that it's in. And finally, World of Warcraft is getting an arachnophobia mode. This is because the upcoming War Within expansion puts a lot of focus on the spider race known as the Nerubians, but it works retroactively on any other spider in the game, like those fuckers in Zul'Gurub. Apparently the mode turns all spiders into crabs, and I don't know about you guys, but that sounds way worse to me. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, Nintendo held an indie showcase this week. Tons of stuff packed into that one, way too much to recount here, but I wanted to shout out a few things quickly. If you liked Pizza Tower, then there's a good chance you're going to love Anton Blast. It has a very similar art style and the same frenetic energy. This one was actually a Kickstarter that got its funding and it's now well on its way to being complete. It'll launch on November 12th this year. Skim, I think that's how you pronounce it, is a very pretty looking, very clever puzzler where you play as a little shadow blob monster thing and you can only move between shadows. It looks very chill, very low stakes, very relaxing, and I love the color work. It arrives on July 18th. And finally, SteamWorld is back, and this time it's another heist game game. I say that because this franchise moves very fluidly between different genres with its various releases, but this one is a 2D platformer featuring turn-based combat and a stunning art style. SteamWorld games have never sold gangbusters, but they're always quality. This one arrives on August 8th. So those were just 3 games showcased by Nintendo in that showcase, but there were tons more for real, and if you enjoy the indie coverage that we do here, I really do recommend checking out the whole showcase over there, because there's plenty of other stuff worth seeing. I'll leave a link to it below the like button. Biggest announcement of the week by far was Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. This one actually leaked early, which pushed up the announcement plans a little, but it's here. Sequel to the absolutely massive first-person medieval role-playing experience released back in 2018. This was phenomenally ambitious for its time, and it didn't get everything right, particularly its combat, but the immersion that this game served up was second to none, and the characters and storylines and settings had so much work put into them. You could tell that this was absolutely a labor of love, and it's nice to know that it did well enough to make a sequel possible. Developer Warhorse Studios said that the sequel will again follow the exploits of Bohemia's hungriest man, Henry Skalitz, which means that we once again get to hear all the townsfolk yelling, "Hey, Henry! Henry's come to see us! Henry! Henry!" They just keep saying his name over and over again. It never ends. The sequel is meant to be twice as big as the first game, and I don't know about that, because the first game was already pretty massive, so that's going to be a lot of video game. Either way, I'm there day one, I'm down, and I'm excited that we won't have to wait too long for it, because Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 will arrive sometime later this year. The other massive announcement this week was a release date for Metaphor ReFantazio, the latest thing from Atlas, led by the Brains Trust of the Persona series. This really does look incredibly striking, clearly still tugging on those Persona social strands, while also delivering an entirely new setting and visual style, and there are very few studios in the business that can deliver visual style the way that Atlas can. Even their menus are works of art. I wasn't certain that this one would arrive this year since we hadn't heard much about it lately, but Sega just confirmed a release date October 11th, arriving on all platforms bar the Switch. Here's a nice one, Tales of the Shire. So Weta Workshop still exists, and now they have a game-making division. This is their first game, and while it's not exactly a lookup, it's a chance just to hang out in Hobbiton, doing Hobbit things, meeting famous hobbits like the Proudfeet, and maybe Gaben if you're lucky. I hear he bought Bag End. It looks pretty straightforward, but hobbits crossed with Animal Crossing sounds like a pretty low-risk bet. There's no date for this one, but it is coming out later this year on all platforms. 7 Days to Die is a game that's been in early access for 12 years, but during that time it's done very well for itself, with over 200,000 reviews on Steam, and it's sitting at a very positive 88%. It's received over 20 major updates over that time, and sometime in June, the game will officially hit 1.0 with a console release planned for sometime in July. It's currently like 75% off on Steam, by the way. You can literally get 2 copies of it for $10. So this would be the perfect time to grab it in preparation for that full release. Mullet Mad Jack is a grungy first-person corridor shooter that Edmond played and loved during the recent Steam Next Fest. Awesome art design echoing 90s anime, and solid action echoing classic shooters like Doom. It's now confirmed to be arriving on PC on May 15th, no word on a console release date yet. And the final release date announcement for the week was for Capes. If you found yourself enjoying Marvel's Midnight Suns but wished it was a bit more XCOM-y, then this one's for you. It's grid-based, lines of sight matter, limited movement, etc., but you're still recruiting, training, and upgrading your heroes to stomp out street-level thugs. Seen some positive buzz for this one, and not gonna lie, I think it looks pretty great. Definitely on my radar. It launches exclusively for PC on the 29th. 3 delay announcements this week. The first is for Braid Anniversary Edition, a remake that features not only new art and sound, but also 40 new levels. This was meant to launch next week, but will now arrive on May 15th, so only a small delay. Not so for Human Fall Flat 2, published by Devolver Digital. This one was meant to launch this year, but has now been pushed back to sometime in 2025. Finally, Prison Architect 2 has been delayed yet again. I say yet again because this was meant to launch back in March and was then promised for May 7th, and now it'll arrive on the 3rd of September if we're lucky. This game is being published by Paradox, who are still reeling from the failure of City Skylines 2. Perhaps they're trying to avoid a similar fate here. So what came out last week? Well, the Final Fantasy XVI Rising Tide DLC dropped. It's meant to be a pretty good time. It's sitting at a fair 71 on OpenCritic, which is kind of standard for a DLC. Press Start scored it a 6, saying that the quest side of things continues to be weak, but the combat continues to shine. Quote, "The Rising Tide ups the ante once again with some seriously impressive fights that really put Clive's expanded arsenal to work, especially on Final Fantasy difficulty. The new standard boss encounters come with some great visual and mechanical variety and put up a decent fight, but the real highlight is the icon battle with Leviathan itself, a multi-stage epic that's up there with the best in the base game," end quote. No Rest for the Wicked launched into early access last week. I'm about to boot this one up as I've been working on Stellar Blade this past week, but early accounts of No Rest for the Wicked are surprisingly mixed. Previews for it were positive across the board, but in the hands of punters, some ugly PC performance issues have reared their heads, and there also seems to be some unpopular design choices relating to things like itemization and gear durability. It debuted at a disappointing 58% positive on Steam, but has since rallied to 70% after some performance patching. Either way, Moon Studios CEO Thomas Mahler seems undeterred, saying, quote, "Our next few weeks and months will be about turning a 58 into a 90. Challenge accepted," end quote. Good on him, I guess. That's exactly what an early access period is for, so hopefully he and the team can make it happen. Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes launched on all platforms this week, and it's met a fairly tepid reception, with the game quite some distance from the early works that inspired it. It's still sitting at a very respectable 76 on OpenCritic, but reviews lack the enthusiasm and passion that this revival was no doubt intended to elicit. IGN scored it a 7, saying, quote, "Once you get past its slow start, Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes mostly succeeds in weaving the stories of multiple countries and characters together into a sprawling epic," end quote. And Eurogamer were in a similar spot, scoring it a 3 out of 5 and saying, quote, "A big throwback RPG that doesn't meaningfully mess with Suikonen's 30-year-old formula," end quote. There are plans for a sequel for this one, so this certainly isn't the last we've heard from this franchise. And finally, Tales of Kenzera Zao did just about what we expected it to. Be a solid debut title that doesn't redefine the Metroidvania genre, but it will hit you in the feels if you've ever lost someone important in your life. It's sitting at a strong 77 on OpenCritic. GameSpot scored this an 8, saying, quote, "Tales of Kenzera Zao's strength lies in its powerful narrative, digging into how one navigates the sadness, rage, and terror that accompanies the worst moments of grief. Its tale has its hiccups, but Zao's adventure of coming to terms with loss resonates through the beating heart of the thumping musical score, standout vocal performances, and dance-like battles that feel straight out of Bantu myth," end quote. Austin also reviewed this one for the channel, link below the like button. He was a fan, also shouting out the game's themes, art design, and music, while commenting that the gameplay side of things is a little safe. It's a nice companion to The Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which played beautifully, but fell flat in the story department. Either way, great to see Abubakar Salim's first game land this well. Looking forward to seeing what he and his studio work on next. So what's coming out this week? Well, don't sleep on Another Crab's Treasure, out today on all platforms. It's a crab-like, Souls-like. I actually played this at the Summer Games Fest last year and met the boys behind it. They're a good laugh, and I enjoyed their game too. It's simple, but it's funny, and the crab can fire a gun, and it has a zone called The Sand Between. What's not to love? Speaking of sand, Sandland arrives for all platforms tomorrow. This is from the late, great Akira Toriyama, and it's part of a transmedia push that sees a TV show, movie, and video game all go out at the same time, each of them telling the same overall story, but in a slightly different way and with different unique things revealed in each. Edmond actually previewed this one. You can find that right up free to all over on the Patreon, link below the like button, and he wasn't the biggest fan of it, especially given that he got to sample both the movie and TV show in the same session that he played the game, and he said that the movie and TV show were telling the story far better. Still, it may come together when you play through the whole thing, and like I said, if you're interested, that one drops tomorrow. Saga Emerald Beyond is the latest entry in Square Enix's long-running JRPG franchise. Big focus on the narrative in this one, featuring plenty of decision-making and branching story paths. Interestingly, it's coming to PlayStation, PC, Switch, and mobile, but not Xbox. Ouch. Surely not what Phil Spencer had in mind when he spent all that time courting Square Enix. Biggest release of the week is Stellar Blade. A huge amount of discussion leading into this one prior to release, but it's pretty clear that Sony has picked yet another winner, as Stellar Blade reviews put the title at a mighty 84 on OpenCritic. Critics praise its visuals, technical polish, and combat, but very few of them have anything positive to say about Stellar Blade's story, characters, and vibes. I can personally attest to the fact that this is a very badly written video game with terribly dull characters that look like they should have far more personality than they actually do. Either way, it's a big win for Korean-based Shift Up, since this is their first console release and an ambitious one at that. It puts the studio on the map in one fell swoop, while also giving Sony a much-needed exclusive to point to in a window where there isn't too much coming down the pike. Like I said, look forward to my review tomorrow, and if you'd like to know the minute that's live, be sure to subscribe and ding the bell so I can personally interrupt whatever you're doing and be like, hey, come watch my video. TopSpin 2K25 arrives tomorrow, but the reviews have already dropped, and they are positive, with the important caveat that online play was very limited during the review window, so actual online performance may vary greatly, as it often does with 2K games. The fundamentals seem to be in place though. TopSpin 2K25 is sitting at a strong 78 on OpenCritic. VGC scored this one a 4 out of 5, saying, quote, "The typical 2K hijinks aside," which we assume is the in-game monetization stuff, "what's on offer here so far is enough to make us recommend TopSpin 2K25, because where it matters on the court, court, it's easily one of the best tennis games we've ever played, end quote. I do wonder how far all of that in-game spending stuff goes. I guess we'll find out in the Steam reviews over the course of the week. Look, Stellar Blade is the biggest release of the week, but I would not be remotely surprised if this next one ended up snagging a larger player base. Manor Lords arrives for PC tomorrow, available day one via Game Pass. It is currently the most wish-listed game on Steam, and it's a wildly ambitious medieval strategy game featuring city building, economic management, and real-time tactics-focused battles. What's crazy is that this is largely a solo-developed game. One dude made most of this, obviously supported in various ways by the publisher Hooded Horse. Absolutely insane. Like, who does that? Usually solo projects are little 2D platformers, while this guy's out here making something that's going toe-to-toe with the likes of Total War and Mountain Blade. Previews for this one dropped a little while ago and everyone loved it. A lot of reasons to be excited for this one. Really hope it lands on its feet. And finally, a few quick ports to rattle through. El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron is a trippy as fuck character action game originally released back in 2011, but remastered in 2021. It'll arrive on the Switch tomorrow. Sea of Thieves finally arrives on the PS5 on the 30th. Loop Hero arrives for iOS and Android on the 30th. I will definitely be buying that one. And finally, the Front Mission 2 Remake console port arrives for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation on the 30th, after having earlier been released on the Switch. This one was never actually released in the West before, so it's your first chance to play it unless you speak Japanese, or you just imported it and randomly clicked on menu items hoping to accidentally select the correct option. We all tried it, particularly back in the PS1 import days. We all met mixed success. Alright, before I show this week's Put This On Your Radar title, I would first like to make clear that this is a real video game. This is not a troll, it is real. So with all that out the way, roll it, Stu.
Going blank.
The actual title for this actual video game is 420 Blaze It 2 Game of the Year Dank Dreams and Goated Memes WoW out of 11 Like and Subscribe Poggers Edition. With a title like that, it's little surprise that the game describes itself thusly, quote, "The Illuminati have stolen all the world's memes. You're an ex-Secret Service agent turned to a peaceful life of painting, but now you're needed one more time to fight back, featuring a state-of-the-art creamy meme slider to adjust your meme levels to your liking. This took a team of 483 developers 7 years to build, making this now a quintuple A game. Get wrecked, scrubs," end quote. I feel like this is the kind of game that Elon Musk would make if he was to make a video game, only he wouldn't be joking, he would just think this stuff is unironically funny. This isn't just shovelware, by the way. The first game was on itch.io and it had a bit of a cult following, and it's actually made by the person who made Crossy Road. So this is a slight genre and tonal shift. There's no release date for this one yet, but it is slated for sometime this year, and if you'd like to wishlist it, I've left a link to it over on my Steam curator page. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and not a lot to shout out this week. Epic still have the Big Con and Town of Salem 2 up, but later this week they'll be replaced by two new titles. The first is Lisa, the Definitive Edition, which is actually two games in one package. Both of them are side-scroller comedy horror titles. The other game is Industria, which I actually played and enjoyed when it released a few years ago. It's got a lot of Half-Life energy, and the overall presentation is excellent, even if the gameplay won't blow you away. The team just announced a sequel to this one, so this is a great chance to check out where it all began. Other than that, only other thing for this week is Xbox Game Pass, which is having a pretty big week, since three of the more interesting new releases are day one on Game Pass. Another Crab's Treasure, Euden Chronicles, and Manor Lords. Game Pass continuing to showcase why it is the best deal in gaming. Our feel-good story for the week is a really nice one, actually. You may have heard of a little device called the Playdate, which is a handheld console that plays simple, small games, a real throwback to the Game Boy era, except now with an added hand crank, which is very satisfying to turn when games make use of it. Anyway, one man by the name of Aaron had a novel idea for a game. It was a letter delivery game called Love Letter, and the letters would come down a chute, and you'd have to use the crank to send them this way or that on a conveyor belt to put them in the right mailbox. Aaron enlisted the support of his girlfriend to playtest the game for him, but awaiting for her at the end was a special surprise. A marriage proposal. Aaron had built this game specifically to propose to his girlfriend, with the final in-game letter popping the question and offering a yes or no option. Had she selected no, Aaron had a contingency, quote, "If she had selected no, it would have just asked, 'Are you sure?' and looped around. Haha," end quote. Haha, indeed. Good hustle, my friend, and congratulations to you and your fiance. And congratulations to all of you out there for making it to the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and if you did, be sure to hit the like button, as we always appreciate that a great deal. We do this each and every week, so if you'd like to come back, be sure to subscribe and ding the notification bell. I'm going to be playing some No Rest for the Wicked this week before settling into what is promising to be a very cruisy May, the only AAA release being Hellblade 2, but there are a few other things to look forward to, like Homeworld 3 and Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. We'll definitely talk more about that one soon. For now though, thanks for watching, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Don't you just hate it when some big TV show is premiering on a streaming service and you renew your subscription, log in, search around for it, only to then discover that it's not available in your region? Believe me, that is a pain that we in Australia know all too well, since a ridiculous amount of content is geo-blocked for us over here. It really sucks. Enter Surfshark VPN, the best means of sidestepping all of that geo-block nonsense, so you can watch whatever the hell you want, whenever the hell you damn please. In just a few simple clicks, Surfshark lets you connect to their global network of nodes, so in 1 minute you're in Sydney, and the very next you're in London, or you're in Delaware for some reason. Point is, Surfshark lets you enjoy TV, movies, and games without having to worry about geoblock, and depending on where you live, that is a pretty big deal. That's not all though. Surfshark VPN is also the best means of protecting your online data, your passwords, your IP addresses, your personal information. Surfshark VPN encrypts your online data, protecting you from identity thefts and hacks, and their clean web feature automatically blocks over 1 million known malicious websites, phishing methods, and other threats. They also offer additional tools for even more online security, like Surfshark Alert, which informs you when a breach has occurred that might impact you, or Surfshark Antivirus, giving you real-time protection as well as regularly scheduled scans. In 2024, we can't just trust every website we're shopping on to keep our data safe. We have to take our own steps to protect our data, otherwise these sorts of hacks and scams are inevitable. You can use Surfshark on multiple devices at once, which is something that almost no other VPN allows. It's available on pretty much every platform you can think of. It has 24/7 customer support, and it has a full 30-day money-back guarantee. Best of all, they're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel. Click the link below and use offer code SKILLUP to get an additional 3 months free. That's 3 additional free months of safe and secure internet browsing when you visit surfshark.deals/skillup and use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.